So experiments to dim the sun could be approved in weeks, which is all part of the government's attempts to slow down global warming.
After decades of claims from conspiracy theorists surrounding chemtrails, it seems that the government has now admitted a brand new geoengineering programme of weather modification. But what does this mean for the people of the UK and the rest of the world? And what exactly are the chemicals inside the geoengineering programme? I'd like to welcome you all back to the channel at Just Gone Viral, and thank you for joining me for another video. If you're new here, we like to cover news and crime, give analysis, and also tell you information that sometimes the mainstream media might not always tell you. So please like, share, comment and subscribe, and let's get straight into today's video. As the UK continues to fall apart, and the cost of living crisis ever increasing going through the roof, the government has now managed to find £50 million of your taxpayers' money to now fund a new geoengineering weather project that will help block out the sun. But the information that they haven't disclosed are what the materials and chemicals that will be used in this geoengineering project. Stay with me in this video as we disclose exactly what will be in them, and also confirm that the conspiracy theorists' theories were right all along.
If you have ever looked up at a commercial airliner flying overhead at high altitude, you might notice a white trail stretching across the sky, known as a contrail. They have ignited a theory that groups or organizations are adding chemicals to be released via aircraft contrails into the air, which have been dubbed chemtrails. Some speculate these chemicals could be used for various purposes to affect the population below, but the most plausible theory surrounding chemtrails is for controlling the weather.
The UK government finally admitted this week and announced that it would be funding an advanced research and invention agency to launch its outdoor geoengineering experiments as part of a funded programme. According to the ARIA, the experiments would be small-scale and thoroughly tested. The programme would make the UK one of the largest global funders for geoengineering. But at what cost has this come to the UK public, and how is their health and well-being being substituted and sacrificed, all in the name of science? And as egotistical green off-his-head Ed last week was embarrassed due to the steel factories having to be continually opened and fed through coal, is this a last-ditch attempt to save some face? In my own opinion, there's enough hot air that comes out of this man's mouth that he could power a whole wind farm himself.
They say the government has set aside £50 million of your taxpayers' money for geoengineering experiment.
When your hobby relies on being able to see things clearly, the relentless gloom enveloping the country hardly helps. The Winnington Park bowmen in Cheshire can't wait for that murk to lift.
The actual targets are fairly bright for us normally, but at the moment it's like shooting in twilight. It's like a mist all the time. So to actually stand on the shooting line, some of us are shooting at 70 metres, it's very, very distracting.
Grey, grey, grey. You wake up in the dark, then it turns grey, and then you drive home from work, it's in the grey and then the dark. It's just miserable. It's
a bit more of an effort to get out, I think. Once you get out here, we're all enjoying it, but yeah, it's more difficult to get out the house, get off the sofa.
For more than a week now, what's called an anticyclonic gloom has meant some places in the UK have had virtually no sunshine. It's been windless, rainless and sunless. Meteorologists say this kind of gloom is unusual, but not unheard of.
Well, there's a variety of different ways in which you could try to affect the planet's temperature by geoengineering. One is to try and make clouds brighter and more reflective, so they reflect more light into space, or try to spray water to create clouds. You could do things like, the really big stuff would be to try and put something out in space that would block some of the sun's rays. So there's a variety of different things that you could do. In terms of actually making a massive difference to the planet's temperature, I don't think any of these things are going to be on the scale that would be required. But in principle, that there are things that you could do. Personally, I think in terms of climate change, it's not going to make much of a difference. But by doing the experiments, you might learn some interesting things that are completely unrelated to the Earth's overall temperature. For example, if you could reduce the sunlight in a particular area where there's a heat wave, you might sort of moderate the effects of a heat wave. But in terms of the broader picture, I don't think we're quite at the scale of playing God just yet.
Well, the idea that we're actually proposing to spend up to 2.7 trillion, which it would cost to scale this up, to add pollution to the atmosphere, to counteract the pollution that we're emitting from the oil industry, is just nonsense. It's like an addict overdosing to deal with their addiction. I consider this is yet again corporate socialism for the oil industry. They make the profits and we pay the costs. The cost, for example, of the 22 billion, I think Andrew agrees on this, the insane Tory Labour project to give the oil companies 22 billion to remove their pollution at the gas plants with carbon capture is insane. The International Oil Energy Agency says the cheapest energy is renewables plus storage. The renewable industry does not require any more subsidies, but the oil industry is doubling up huge amounts. Over the last 3 years, it took £70 billion of UK taxpayers' money to subsidise them after the Ukraine spike. We're now spending 22 billion on the carbon capture, and now this money on geoengineering. All we need to do is to move to green transition economy that's cleaner and cheaper for consumers.
Well, I mean, just that's all of that is just. I mean, I agree with Donahue about carbon capture and storage. There isn't any proven technology for it, and doing it at scale doesn't seem to make any economic sense. So, I mean, of course, experiment again, and do experiments, and if you can suddenly brilliant idea comes along, then that's great. But I think we should be devoting our energies more into things like nuclear anyway, but we also should stop putting barriers in the way of fossil fuels, which are the cheapest energy source. Renewables are not the cheapest. Once you take into account the actual price that we pay in our bills, they are considerably more expensive, and for all the talk about they don't need subsidies, actually they need massive subsidies.
But can we go back to this technology? Can we go back to this technology? Rob, is there not an ethical issue here about the state trying to interfere and change the climate?
Well, we do things like in terms of changing nature all the time. I mean, the fact that we're all sitting here in buildings, we are adapting our micro environment so that we can live, and flourish as human beings. And so, the idea that we could, in some way, exercise a limited amount of control over our climate is not, in principle, a bad thing. I'm extremely sceptical about how this could work at a global scale. For example, just to take Mount Pinatubo, which erupted in 1991, emitted 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the air, and that reduced the global temperature by a fraction of a degree for about 3 years. And there's nothing that's being proposed at the moment that's anywhere near the scale that would even do that, never mind counteract climate change altogether. It's just a non-starter in my opinion.
I think Donahue, I saw you mutter the word, it's terrifying, and I'm with you on this. These utopian ideas, these power-hungry, obviously Bill Gates is massively behind this in America, these so-called philanthropists that want to save the world, they have to remember that nature generally gets it right.
Well, the problem with I see with this debate is that actually I believe that they're interfering with our climate, whether it's this mad scientist idea of pouring billions of tons of sulfate into the stratosphere or pouring billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, both of which interrupt with nature's ability to maintain a stable temperature for us, is actually terrifying. Both sides are terrifying, and what we need to do is we have ways of going forward. We have the technology. It is economically positive for Britain, and I'm actually with Ed Miliband on this. This is good for our energy security, it's good for economics, but we need to stop playing God with the atmosphere. It's, the experiment on sulfate, one of the side effects of pouring huge amounts of sulfate into the atmosphere is it could destroy the ozone layer.
Absolutely.
We just started healing it. Now to start destroying it again to stop climate change for the oil billionaires' profits doesn't make sense to me.
Who made billions out of creating super clunky corporate software. What you didn't realize is that Bill Gates doesn't think of himself that way. Bill Gates doesn't think of himself as some guy who got super rich making bad software. Bill Gates thinks of himself as God, in control of the solar system. And that's why Bill Gates is now backing something called sun-dimming technology that would reflect sunlight out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing global cooling. Ooh, that's not fraught with risks. You thought gain-of-function research on pathogens was dangerous. Try that. But that doesn't stop Harvard University. Its scientists are testing that technology by spewing calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial. It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth.
Now, just to restate, Bill Gates is not God. Bill Gates is some kind of weird, socially awkward rich guy who lives in Seattle. He doesn't own the planet, but he's now changing the planet single-handedly. This is not just over his yard in Seattle, this is over your yard and our oceans and the whole planet.
So as the government confirms what everybody knew for decades, what are the materials that will be used in his geoengineering programs? Well, for light to be reflected from the sun, it has to have a reflective element to it. They will tell you that this is water or water particles, when in fact the materials and elements that will be disposed into the air are things such as zinc, aluminium and shredded plastics. This is all while the government saves money on disposing of recycling. So next time you fill your recycling bin up, just remember next time where it might be going. In a plane to then be sprayed in the sky and fall down on your head. And the next time that you're ill or sick, and so is your friend or family, it might not be just a bug going round, but the fact that you're all breathing in the same stuff that is falling down out of the sky. I hope you enjoyed the video and the content. Smash a like if you did, take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next video.